Welcome to the Shadow City Podcast. I am your host, Larry, and this is The Shadows Within. We got a few shows to cover. EWS Danger Zone, EWS Black Market, GPW Ignition Part 4, All-Star Pro Classic Classic 3, Night 1, ROV River City Rumble, GEW Bloodbound Volume 2, and TXT Sin City Massacre. Also, it was announced IWA, the Snake Pit, will be held in 2 weeks. Under Pressure will be pushed to a month from now. And for DSEW 2K26, when we do get it, you already know the pay-per-view will be Shawshank Rebellion. So stay tuned for that. But we are going to get these shows going. Starting with EWS Danger Zone. Then we're going to move on to Black Market. EWS Danger Zone, Episode 12, Onyx Callahan and Jackson Callahan versus Salvatore Nightwalker and Dominic Daybreaker versus Xavier Colefield and Riker Colefield versus Donald Hilton and Clayton Wallace, with Xavier and Riker Colefield walking away victorious. Extreme Rules Lockjaw versus Red X, with Lockjaw walking away victorious. EWS Women's Tag Team Championships Extreme Rules. The champions Have a Nice Day versus Loki and Diamond Demoise, with Loki and Diamond Demoise walking out the new champions. Mixed Gender Tag, Daniel Demoise and Darla Hilton versus Quinn J. Stone and Blackfire, with Quinn J. Stone and Blackfire walking away victorious. Extreme Rules, Shea Blade versus Victoria Williams, with Victoria Williams walking away victorious. Extreme Rules, Riot Al Ghul versus KD, with Riot Al Ghul walking away victorious. EWS World Television Championship, Curtis Stevens versus Vengeance, with Curtis Stevens walking away victorious. Extreme Rules, Nick's Night Shroud versus Chaos, with Nick Nightshroud walking away victorious. Extreme Rules, EWS World Championship, Ika Appa versus Sharon Callahan, the champion, with Ika Appa walking out the new champion. EWS Black Market, Episode 6, EWS No Limit Hardcore Championship, Fatal 4-Way. Warren Oxley versus Deathstroke Al Ghul versus Ree versus Heyo Asakara, with Heyo Asakara walking away victorious. Extreme Rules, Lodi Madison versus Starlight, with Lodi Madison walking away victorious. Extreme Rules, Kyle Parks versus Rico Vega, with Kyle Parks walking away victorious. EWS Soul Championship, Roxy Graves versus Rin Blade, with Rin Blade the champion retaining the gold. EWS Spirit Championship, Kazarian Justice versus the champion Mutant X, with Kazarian Justice walking out the new champion. EWS Men's Tag Team Championships, Extreme Rules, the Little Demoise Dynasty, the champions, versus Nightmare and Riven Creed, with Riven Creed and Nightmare becoming the new champions. EWS Black Market Women's World Championship, Extreme Rules, Paige Crucial versus Laura Little versus champion Hyacinth, with Paige Crucial walking out the new champion. EWS Black Market Men's Championship, Extreme Rules, Sinestro the Clown versus Taylor Valentine versus the champion Victor Graves, with Taylor Valentine walking out the new champion. GPW Ignition Part 4. GPW Undisputed Tag Team Championships TLC, ABM and Big C versus Khan and Kabuki Dragon, with Khan and Kabuki Dragon walking away victorious. Madison Landon versus Yellow Ranger, with Madison Landon walking away victorious. Backstage Brawl, The Demon versus Adrian Danger, with the Demon walking away victorious. WWM Television Championship Special Guest Referee, Buster Anderson, for the match between Cash Gordy and the champion Aku, with Aku retaining the gold. Southern Psycho versus Turtle Harrington, with Southern Psycho walking out victorious, but was attacked by Ranger Rogue after the matchup. Fatal 4-Way, Reagan Anderson versus Sylvia Knight versus Sweet Death versus Britt Monet, with Britt Monet walking away victorious. Triple Threat Scorpio versus Victor Blackthorn versus Mason Payne, with Scorpio walking away victorious. Isaac Frost versus Unrivaled Blade, with Unrivaled Blade walking away victorious. King of the Mountain Championship Underground, which is the King of the Mountain match for them. Akane Vachon versus the champion Ranger Rogue, with Akane walking out the new champion. But after that, he had to defend his gold against Big Lou in a King of the Mountain Championship match, which is under the King of the Mountain match, which is the Underground. Big Lou walked out victorious. Then Big Lou had to defend his in an Underground, which is their King of the Mountain match, against Ranger Rogue, with Ranger Rogue becoming the new champion again. Welcome, Damian Briggs of TXT. How are you, sir? Successful show last night. It was incredible. We will be going over that when we get there. I have it listed down. Fantastic show, sir. I can't wait for the next one. And also, March 21st and March 22nd will be TXT The Pinnacle 2-night event. And before The Pinnacle, me and this man will be setting up an interview to go over what's happened in TXT as far and maybe even what's going to go down at the Pinnacle. All-Star Pro, All-Star Classic 3, Night 1. All-Star Pro Cruiserweight Championship Extreme Rules, Carlos Cruz versus Mason Payne versus DeMarco with the Fallen versus the champion Kando Dragon, with Mason Payne walking out the new champion. Jackson versus Alex Knight, with Alex Knight walking out victorious. All-Star Jam Gauntlet Eliminator, Sandra versus Crazy Amy versus Selena Blaze versus Bailey Nelson versus Baby, also known as Baby Bone Crusher, versus Emma Rose versus Callie Rage versus Madison Outlaw, with Callie Rage walking away victorious. All-Star Pro Grindhouse Championship Extreme Rules, El Grande Filipino versus the champion Sam Magnum, with El Grande Filipino walking out the new champion. 6-man tag match, Katsumi Yoshimura and Lancer Haito and Jiro Sawada versus Rob Life, Bishop Blaze, and Pedro Payne, with Bishop Blaze, Rob Life, and Pedro Payne walking away victorious. Chicago Street Fight, Sean Smith versus the champion Larry Loco, with Sean Smith walking out the new champion for the All-Star Pro World Television Championship held under the Chicago Street Fight. All-Star Pro Grand Prix Championship 2 out of 3 Triple Threat, Kabuki Dragon versus the Dream Superstar versus the champion Jay Smoke, with Kabuki Dragon walking out the new champion. All-Star Pro Grand Prix Championship. Oh, wait, I already went over that one. All-Star Pro Classic Women's Championship, Angel Bryant versus Reagan Anderson, the champion, with Angel Bryant walking out the new champion. All-Star Pro World Championship on the line, Damian Briggs versus the champion Lil Devil, with Damian Briggs walking out the new champion. Excuse me.
What time do you have to leave?
Oh, that's not happening today. It will be another day.
Okay.
ROV River City Rumble Mayhem for the Apex World Cruiserweight Championship, which was held under an 8-way battle royal. And it was between, for the Apex World Cruiserweight Championship, and it was between Ultimo and Hilo, Ghost Edwards, Brett Simmons, Cooper Webb, Nathan Drake, Rafael LaFleur, and El Numero Uno Sparks. Welcome, Chris Graves. Welcome, sir. Hope you are well and hope you're doing great. Hey, that very well could happen, sir, in SPW. I wish you the best in your future endeavors and see what you shall do with SPW going forward. And Hilo walked out the new champion. Mayhem Underground Championship Underground. Suzuki Cho versus the Buzzsaw Butcher, the champion, with Buzzsaw Butcher retaining the gold. There was a 10 ladies Royal Rumble between Angel Love, Mystica Phantasma, Nicole Davis, Reagan Anderson, Cassandra Cash, Kay Slay, Madison Nelson, Quinn Jones, Sylvia Knight, and Kyrie Sparks, with Reagan Anderson walking away victorious. Mayhem Vanity Championship, Reagan Anderson versus the champion Britt Graves, with Britt Graves retaining the gold. Mayhem U.S. Championship, as the champion Andre Bishop defended against Anthony Harris, with Andre Bishop retaining the gold. Unrivaled Blade versus AJ Woods, with Unrivaled Blade walking away victorious. Mayhem Women's World Championship, Taylor Griffin versus the champion Emma Taylor, with Taylor Griffin walking away the new champion. In the Men's Royal Rumble 30-man, Big Lou versus Ace versus Andre Bishop versus Buster Anderson versus Corey Bishop versus Draven versus JG versus Jay Thrasher versus Ridge Reaper versus Unrivaled Blade versus ADK versus AJ Woods versus Backwoods Butcher versus Brandon Green versus David Creed versus Diego Mysterio versus Javon versus Marcus Mills versus Rob Anderson versus Zeb Jones versus Aaron Adams versus Akane versus BLK versus Chris Lewis versus Double A versus Insidious versus Jaquil versus Nexus versus Shane York versus El Guapo Sparks, with Akane walking out victorious. And for the Mayhem World Championship, the Savage John Robb took on the Assassin, the champion, Jack Graves, with John Robb walking out the new champion. Now we are going to go over GEW Bloodbound 2, Volume 2. Extreme Rules, Johnny Hernandez versus the American Badass John Wigginton, with Johnny Hernandez walking away victorious. Extreme Rules, Alexander Valentine versus Dimebag Dan, with Alexander Valentine walking away victorious. The Bloody Five matchup between Miss Demon X versus Miss B Nasty versus Montana Monet Red versus Lilith versus Casey Hopkins versus Miss Demon X. Special guest referee Frankie Fingers for the Fatal 4-Way Extreme Rules. Killian Bain versus Khan versus Jay Smoke versus the champion Foxpit, with Jay Smoke walking out the new champion for the Fight Club Triple Crown Championship. Fight Club U.S. Championship special guest referee Yams for Bombshell versus the champion Don Mecca, with Bombshell walking out the new champion. The Queen of New York Championship Roxy versus the champion Violet Death, with Violet Death retaining the gold. King of the Cage Championship held under the King of the Cage match, which is their Hell in a Cell. Welcome, Nana. I hope you're well. I love you and miss you. And it was Frankie Fingers being the special guest referee for Savage Vega, Mr. El Padrino, versus Sonny Chiba versus Jay Money versus the champion Chambers, with Sonny Chiba walking out the new champion. Underground World TV Championship Extreme Rules special guest referee Yams for Talos versus Garmar versus Fly Guy versus the champion Gorilla Cruz, with Garmar walking out the new champion. In the cap off that night, it was the King of New York Championship Mad King versus the champion Caleb Hopkins, with Mad King walking out the new champion. And welcome Wes Grimm, who had his last match for IWA. He will be competing in other places, but his son is going to be taking up the rankings in IWA. But he himself had his last match at the IWA Grand Royale against CJ Frost. Hell of a match, sir. Hope you are well. Grimline in the house. And you just got here just in time. And I know he's still here, Damian Briggs. We are now going over TXT Sin City Massacre. And to kick off the show, it was for the TXT Women's Undisputed Championship, as Nikita Sakamoto took on Bunny Black, with Nikita Sakamoto walking away victorious. Welcome, Zoe Spencer. Welcome. Hell in a Cell 5-way. AJ Woods versus SGK versus Kang versus the villain Todd Wilson versus El Padrino Savage Vega, with AJ Woods walking away victorious. TXT United States Championship Jackson Wright took on the champion Crazy Joker, with Crazy Joker retaining the gold. TXT Apex Predator Championship. Violet Death versus the champion Emily Wright, with Emily Wright retaining the gold. There is a 20-women gauntlet eliminator for the TXT Women's Universal Championship. And it was between Akira Turner, Cho Yamashita, Cherry Bomb, Emma Rose, HBIC Nisha, Jocelyn, Ms. D, Misdemeanor, Riley the Ripper, Six, The Baker, Brick Graves, Crazy Fox, Dynamite Daisy, Hawaiian Jewel, Haku, Lindsay, Reagan Anderson, Rose Wilson, Sylvia Knight, and Veronica LeBeau, with Riley the Ripper walking out the new champion. TXT Heritage and Honors Men's Championship. Oconee took on the Phantom Eddie Walker, with Eddie Walker retaining the gold. TXT Women's Heritage and Honor Championship. Angel Bryant versus the champion Kailani Wilson, with Angel Bryant walking out the new champion. Hell in a Cell Fatal 5-Way. Amaya Bryant versus Lakeisha Wilson versus Haley Ramone versus Lico Lyons versus Big Fran, with Lakeisha Wilson walking away victorious. 20-man gauntlet eliminator for the TXT Men's Universal Championship. Big Lou versus Brock Lesnar versus Dr. Grimm versus Dimebag Dan versus Inkslinger versus Jay Prince versus the Savage John Robb versus Cold Steel versus Mad King versus Primetime JoJo versus Adrian Danger versus Buster Anderson versus Damian Briggs versus Evil Johnny versus Jack Graves versus Jay Smoke versus Killian Bain versus Little Devil versus Pat G, and versus the one Tyson Storm, with Jack Graves walking out victorious and with the championship. And to cap off the night, this was 2 matches. First, it was an underground between John Wigginton and the Problem One, which John Wigginton won in the underground. But then he earned a TXT Undisputed World Championship match against the Problem One in the actual main event. And John Wigginton walked out the new champion. So congrats to him. Congrats to one hell of a night. And I also want to give a big shout out to the UWA that put on their first show last night for a pro wrestling show. Congrats to them. And I can't wait to see where they go in the future. And they are going to continue to grow. Good luck to them. And what are you doing? Are you doing like a little dance in the background? One time I got to get your butt over here and talk on here with me.
Oh, what? You want to show Tyler?
Heck yeah, man. Let's get you on here sometime.
Oh, man, don't you?
Oh, boy. But that is what I had to go over at this time, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned for more updates. But I do hope everybody has a great day, good night, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever y'all may be. Peace out.